day plans. Good afternoon, Ms. Seymour. Looks like you're all alone this afternoon. But shall we give the rest of your classmates a few moments? And see who else decides to participate in our class this afternoon.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. I saw the homework, the new
Okay.
homework assignment, so
Good. I like that.
did you grade the other one yet, Mr. Demerick?
I'm not finished with everyone. So I think I'll hold off, and there's a long weekend coming up, so maybe I'll just use that to grade both homeworks.
On time, okay.
No, it won't be both homeworks because,
Oh, yeah, that one is due Monday.
yes.
Okay. Alrighty.
Good evening.
Hey, Tamiko.
Good evening. Okay, this is Tamiko now. Okay. Did you get the homework?
No, I didn't get my homework back, but I will double check.
No, not the old homework, the new homework.
Yes, I just see it just now. I saw that. Thank you.
Okay, I haven't given back the old homework as yet because I'm still grading them.
Okay.
And good afternoon, Ms. Bethel. Now that we have Ms. Seymour, Ms. Tamiko, and Ms. Lanique, Crystal, that is, I think we should get started. Yeah, I'm not really big on Bahamian time, though I try to be as accommodating as I can, but there's a lot we want to get through today. First of all, as you know, Monday's a holiday, and they insist that I actually give you guys Monday off. Yeah, so we won't have any class on Monday. It's like Slavery Day or something, if I remember correctly, Emancipation Day. So no class on Monday. However, homework is due on Monday. Yeah, you don't have to come to class. You can do your homework before Monday and hand it in on Monday. Right, and at some point during the course of this afternoon's class, we will talk about the homework in more detail, but it looks fairly straightforward as far as that goes. All right. I think that's it for any administrative stuff. Okay, so let me move this stuff out of the way. All right. So you should be able to see our class notes on your screen, where we're saying we ended our class last time. And we said, who's that showing up now? Oh, that is Miss Mackey. Good afternoon, Miss Mackey. We just got started, and I just advised those who came in before you that, excuse me, my apologies. Monday's a holiday, so we won't have any class on Monday, but your newest home, well, is Fabi or Fabi. I don't know how she likes to pronounce it. Okay, now I start all over again here. No class on Monday because apparently there's a holiday, Emancipation Day. But your newest homework, which I just gave out that you should receive in your inbox, is still due on Monday, right, by 6 p.m. Right. So just because it's holiday and we don't have any class doesn't mean your homework is not due on Monday by 6 p.m. The homework looks relatively straightforward, but at some point during the course of this afternoon's class, we will talk more about what's expected from the homework, and you get the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, and any confusion that you may need clarity to in regards to the homework. Excuse me. That's it for the administrative stuff. So we ended last class, right? We said there were 3 ways of looking at the data collected by statistical agencies through their surveys. In the Bahamas, that agency is Department of Statistics. In other countries, that agency may go by different names. All right. And they would go out and they collect information on various products and the prices that various retailers are selling those products for. And they will use that information, plug it into their computer systems, and that may produce the following kinds of information, either in a table form, a tabular form, as we see in our demand schedule. Right? It can also produce that same information in a graphical form, as we see in our demand curve, or they can use that information to construct what is called a demand function, or demand equation, if you like the word better. But it's a demand function because it says there's a functional or operational relationship between our 2 variables. Our 2 variables are quantity demanded, how much is actually going to be demanded by our customers, and what price we're going to charge for that item. And how much we're going to sell, or how much our customers are going to be demanding, is going to depend very much on what price we put on that product. Right? So 3 different ways of looking at the exact same information. All right, so then, we also wanted to talk about some of the other things that may affect how much of this good or service that we're willing to consume. Because if you look at the information presented here, the only thing that we are considering in terms of affecting how much consumers are going to want to demand of this product is the price. That's the only thing we looked at. We saw what happens when the price change, how does that affect quantity demanded, or the amount of this product that our customers are going to want to purchase. But there are other factors that must be taken into consideration, or may be taken into consideration depending on the individual customer. Some of these factors may include not just price, but also the income of that customer. Because we know that as our income rises, we tend to buy more of all goods and services. Clearly, because we can afford more. Because we can afford more, we buy more. We buy more, we consume more. As our income goes up, we tend to want to consume more of what we call normal goods, regular, ordinary goods. We're not talking about luxury items, and we're not talking about necessities. All right, we're talking about what we consider normal goods. And for normal goods, as our income goes up, our demand for these products and services also go up. What else may affect how much of a given product we may want to consume? Well, the price of some other related goods may affect our demand decision. Right? If this is 2 goods that we can have a substitute for, then if the price of the good that we want goes up, we are much more likely to switch to a closer substitute if that closer substitute is cheaper. Right? So our demand for the substitute goes up when the price of our preferred item goes up, because we switch from one to the other, from the more expensive to the less expensive item. On the other hand, if we have goods that we consume together, what we call complements or complementary goods, goods that we consume together, if the price of one goes up and we decide to buy less of that good, then we also want less of the other complementary good, even if the price of that complementary good hasn't changed. Because we buy them together. If we don't buy one, we're not going to buy the other. If we buy one, we are going to buy the next one. Right? We consume them together. So it's either we buy both of them or we buy neither. Complementary goods. Right? What else may affect our demand for a given good or service? Population. If more people want to buy a certain good, then by definition, demand for that good has gone up. If more people want it, then by definition, demand for that product has increased. We also talked about how our tastes and preferences are very often driven by advertising. And this could be both positive and negative. Right? Advertising can induce us to buy products that we may not otherwise have purchased. Advertising can indeed influence our preferences, but advertising can also be used to discourage consumption, right? By changing our taste in a negative way. For example, in the early 80s, a concerted effort was made by countries around the world to eliminate tobacco advertising on television and on radio. Because they knew that the advertising was driving a lot of demand for tobacco products. And they wanted to curtail the demand for tobacco products by their general population, particularly their young people. Because you have, let's say you're talking about somewhere in the United, like say you're talking about the United States, for example, and there was this cigarette manufacturer, RJR Nabisco, who sold tons of different types of cigarettes, including the Camel brand, which, depending on who you were talking to, argued that it was marketed towards high schoolers, teenagers. Yeah, we don't see smoking in the Bahamas very much at all, but you never ever see it in terms of high school students, because I'm sure you know, if it's in your school, and I remember from my school days, that was grounds for expulsion. So you don't see that. But in the United States, certainly students age 18 or older are able to smoke. And the argument was that a lot of these tobacco companies were marketing their products to this younger age group, because if you get them early, get them hooked, and then they are, they're stuck on your product for forever, kind of thing. And by eliminating that marketing on air, the thought was you would reduce person's interest in smoking. One can argue whether it worked or not, that's a different story. And then finally, we talked about expectation of future prices. How our demand for a product today can be affected by what we think the price is going to do tomorrow. Even though the price today doesn't change, if we expect the price tomorrow to change, it affects how much of that product or how willingly we are to consume that product today. Right? The expectation of future prices changes one of those three criteria: ready, willing, and able, that constitutes the core of what we call demand for a product or service. All right. So we said these are some of the factors that may affect demand for a good or service. Right. That's where we ended the class last time, and we said, okay. One of the last issues that we're going to cover, and this is item number 7, if we're enumerating these, is the difference between change in quantity demanded. Because if you go back to our table, we see the heading is price and quantity demanded. In our function, we have quantity demanded. We didn't say demand, we said quantity demanded. And in fact, there is a difference between the terminology or the nomenclature when we say quantity demanded is very different when we say change in demand. Now, they're both talking about how much of a given product or service we're interested in consuming, right? But one quantity change in quantity demanded is very specific. It's about how much a product or change or service that we are willing to consume based solely on a change in the price. Change in quantity demanded is only dealing with how much we're willing to buy based on a change in the price. All right, only dealing with a change in the price. So a change in quantity demanded is associated with a change in the price of that product, not the price of any associated goods, excuse me, a change in the price of that specific product. And we see this graphically as a movement along the demand curve. Okay, so let's see how that would look. Right. Let's say we start at a price P0 in our diagram. And at price P0, we're willing to demand quantity Q0. So the price at P0 is associated with quantity demanded at Q0. When the price went up, the law of demand says when price goes up, quantity demanded falls. And so we see a change or a decline in the amount consumers are willing to buy goes from Q0 to Q1. When price went up, demand went down. And if we have a demand curve that looks like QD, we are in fact going from the intersection X to that point Y, and we see that as a movement along the demand curve. Right. So as price rises from P0 to P1, we see that quantity demanded falls from Q0 to Q1. So in essence, we have moved along the demand curve from point X to point Y. So a change in quantity demanded is a movement along the demand curve. A change in quantity demanded is a movement along the demand curve. Is a change in the amount that we're willing to consume based purely, only, solely, exclusively on a change in the price level. So a change in quantity demanded is associated with a change in the price level, and we see it graphically as a movement along the demand curve. Right. What about if there's a change in any of those other variables that we talked about? So here are the other variables: income, substitutes, complements, population, taste and preferences, or expectation of future prices. Right. So we have all these other variables that are not the price. So what happens there? How do we see, when we're trying to look at it visually, how do we see their impact on the amount of a good and service that we're willing to consume? All right, that is this graph here. All right, so a change in demand, right, is associated with a change in any other variable. A change in demand that is unrelated to the price, right, it will cause a full shift in the demand curve. Right? If there's an increase in demand, the curve shifts out. If there's a decline in the amount that people are willing to consume, the curve shifts inward. Right? In this case, we see a curve shift outward. And why does that happen? Right? The best way to look at this is through examples. So here, all right, so let's look at the first figure. And the first figure is looking at the market for meat. based on income. You see where we have income on the top of the y-axis, all right? And we see here where our demand curve, see where the demand curve is shifting inward. The arrows are telling you that we went from this solid pink line to this broken blue line. So it's an inward shift in the demand curve. What would have caused such an event to occur? If, for example, you or your husband lost their job, then the household income would have fallen. In that case, then, you would see demand curve for meat purchased by our household would fall. Why would the demand curve go in? Because it would say all prices of meat that your family normally buys, you would buy less, right? Whether you're talking the cheapest, and chicken wings, you said, you know what? We only have a one income family to work with now. So we may decide to buy 3 pounds of chicken wings instead of 5, right? When you're talking something maybe more mid-priced, all right? Whether you're talking, I don't know, beef patties, and you say, you know what, money kind of tight, we can buy less beef patties. And even the more expensive stuff, you used to get, because your husband likes steak, you like grill once in a while. If he's anything like me, you know what, sweetie, we even have to cut back on the steaks. All right. Whether you're talking cheap, middle price, or expensive meats, you're going to cut back on all of them because your income fell. Right? And we can do that for the entire population of the country as a whole. If there's a decline in the national income, then people will be buying less of all prices of meat. Right? Let's look at the second graph to your right. Here, the variable we're considering is population and how that's affecting the market for COVID-19 masks. Clearly, as more people want masks, the demand for masks is going to go up. Whether you're talking little cheap cloth masks, the mid-price mask, or the very high, what's it, K9, whatever it is, HNK, whatever that is, the highest, saving the prime minister kind of masks. All quality of masks, all price levels of masks, demand for all masks is going to go up because, for the most part, unless you're really stupid, you don't want to get sick. Right? So we see an outward shift in the demand curve for masks because the population demanding masks go up. All right, whether you're talking about old people, middle-aged people, even young children, demands for all of these have gone up. And therefore, the price of all these various masks have gone up. Demand for masks have gone up because population demanding masks has gone up. Right? Here's taste and preferences. Right. Here we're talking about, in this case, we're talking about denim pants, what Bahamians call jeans. It doesn't have to be jeans, because jeans is a brand name. It could be Levi's, could be Dockers, it could be some other brand name of denim pants. All right. And let's say whomever this is running an excellent marketing campaign. And that tells you that, listen, my particular brand of denim pants will make your ass look, ooh, whoa, and you make your legs look, ooh, and make you look like you dropped 20 pounds, and you buy that. Now, whether you want the cheapest brand that they have, their mid-price offering or the very highest end of their denim line, if their advertising has been effective, then demand at all price levels are going to go up. Right? Preferences, in this case, being driven by advertising, taste and preferences being driven by advertising. So we would see then an outward shift in demand for denim at all price levels. Right. We talked last time about how the diamond engagement ring business, right, where advertising has driven tastes and preferences for diamond engagement rings. And that is true even if you are a guy who at best can afford maybe a 1/4 carat diamond for your lady love. You're the kind of guy who could swing for a 2-carat diamond to put on her finger, or you're the big shot who could come in with a 5 diamond and blow her mind. All right. If the advertising is effective, you know that that's what she wants. And it's going to be increase in demand for diamond rings at all price levels. Because that demand is not driven by the price, but that demand is being driven by the advertising that has changed the preferences of women when it comes to diamond engagement rings. What about substitute goods? Right here, this is the market for Pepsi. All right. And what could have caused demand for Pepsi to fall? Right. What's a good, we're not saying perfect, but what's a good substitute for Pepsi? Coke, right? There is no other possible, there was in the market, there was something called RC Cola. I don't know if you guys remember this. Right. But it clearly lost out in the cola wars. Right? So Pepsi and Coke are not perfect substitutes because you ask anybody, they seem to have a specific preference, but they're close enough substitutes such that if the demand for Pepsi fell, it probably meant that the demand for Coke went up. Because if you like cola, demand for Pepsi, the only reason why demand for Pepsi would have fell is because demand for the substitute good went up. Now, it could be for a couple of reasons. It could be that the price of Coke went down because our law of demand says if price goes down, demand goes up. So if we decide to buy more Coke because it's cheaper than Pepsi, clearly there's going to be some Pepsi drinkers who decide, you know what, I'm not wedded to Pepsi. If they keep raising their price like this, I can go over to Coke. Or if they don't raise that price, but Coke is cheaper, then I can go to Coke. The result would be demand for Coke goes up, and subsequently demand for Pepsi is going to go down because they are substitute goods. On the other hand, complementary goods, here, this is the market for pancake syrup, right? Why would we want to buy more syrup? The only reason why we would want to buy more syrup is because we bought or are interested in buying more batter. All right. That it makes no sense for us to buy more syrup if we're not going to have anything to put the syrup on. So if we see the market for pancake syrup going up, it must mean that the demand for pancake batter must also have gone up. Because the only way you're going to want more pancake syrup is because you got more pancake batter. Okay. And finally, expectation of future prices. And here we're looking at both the market for gasoline and the market for chicken. So the question that must be asked, man, is that we see the demand for gasoline falling. Why would demand for gasoline fall today? What could cause you to decide today that even though my tank on quarter, my car on quarter tank, I'm not going to buy any gas today? Why? Any
Because the
suggestions?
price going up? Because there was an increase in the price?
Because there was a decrease in the price.
I mean, but
The demand is not as high anymore for gas.
no, I understand now. We're talking about the expectation of future prices. We say the price of gasoline doesn't change today, but yet you still deciding not to buy gas today, even though you need gas today.
It's not changing. So there's really not a higher demand because it's expected not to change.
Wait, okay, let me see if I understand you. Right. You normally, you don't like your car to go to eat. All right. Once it hit quarter time, you start, getting a little panicky. You want to get some gas. You with me?
Mhm.
All right. So your tank just hit quarter tank. Your car just hit quarter tank. So you thinking, yeah, I need to go get some gas. All right. If the price of gas today is still what it was yesterday, still what it is today, why would you not get gas today?
There's no change in the demand. It's
No,
not,
no, 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 no. We're talking about you now.
well, I would
Why
not
would
get
you
it.
not get, you like, once hit quarter tank, you like to put gas in your car. Sensible thing to do. All right, that has been your normal mode of MO, modus operandi, method of operation, whatever it is. Once it hit quarter tank, you start thinking, I need to come get some gas. What would have to happen for you not to get gas today, even though the price today didn't change?
Wouldn't she have more than a quarter tank gas in a car?
No, let's assume she has a quarter tank.
Then she must have no money to pay for no gas to put in the car.
Let's
Maybe she
assume,
think,
let's assume she has money.
maybe she think the price tomorrow could be less.
Okay, walk me through that. Is she think the price gonna go down tomorrow?
Yeah, that means she could get more gas for the same dollar.
So she can hold off and try and make whatever in the time stretch till tomorrow
Yeah,
to catch a
maximize the
lower
dollar.
price.
The double
Cause
it.
she ain't really owe the gas. Ain't like she empty, so she could survive until tomorrow if it going down tomorrow.
Right.
So we understand what you're saying. If you expect prices in the future being tomorrow, to go down, your demand for gas today is going to go down. Because remember now, our definition of demand, ready, willing, and able. Now, clearly, she still got the money. She still wants gas because, once it hit quarter tank, she wants gas. But she is no longer willing to purchase gas tonight. Instead, she's going to defer until the price goes down at some point in the future, tomorrow, hopefully.
Right. That's the same concept like persons who about to buy a home or ready to buy a home, but they expect a market crash for lower prices, so they wait until the market crash to try to invest. It's a similar concept.
Yeah, but I'll give you an even better example. You know how we aim and say, we want to go catch that sale. Is that exactly the same thing? Isn't a sale nothing more than a decline in the price? We're willing to hold on to whatever money that we're planning on spending for whatever we're going to spend it on until the price goes down.
Mhm.
All right. So we are going to defer demand today. So demand today is going to fall because we expect prices to go up in the future, prices to go down in the future, and we can wait until prices go down to spend that money then.
Mhm. The double.
Our willingness to consume that good or service goes down today, even though the price today didn't change. Expectation of future prices.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, let's flip that around. You normally get chicken every time you go to the supermarket because, you know, you're Bahamian and we love our chicken. All right. But your normal supermarket, tell you, listen, we have, you know, chicken coming in, you know, next week. Mm. But, you know, yeah, that chicken can be a little bit more pricey than what we have now because whatever, you know, supply chain, inflation, whatever excuse he's trying to tell you, the bottom line is, yeah, even though you shop in today, with today being Wednesday, you know, come Friday, which is your normal shopping day, that chicken could be considerably higher than what it is today. What do you do?
Go buy the chicken.
Why?
That's the chicken I like. And the
Yeah.
price is going up. So before the price goes up, on the flip side, like gas, I would go instantly purchase so that I can save.
So let me ask you this. What has changed? Because the price of the chicken today didn't change.
My taste and my preference.
All right. The amount of money you have didn't change. And your family still like chicken, so that ain't changed.
That's the type of chicken.
So when we talk, again, it brings us back to our core concept of demand: ready, willing, and able. You are no longer willing to consume chicken today. Sorry, you're no longer willing to consume chicken in a couple of days' time. In fact, you're much more willing to consume chicken today than you were before, because you want to catch that chicken now before the price go up. All right. So all we're saying is that when we're talking about expectation of future prices, we're saying our demand for products may change, even though the price today doesn't change, but we expect prices in the future to change. That's what we're talking about. All right. Okay, so the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Change in quantity demand is when the number of units that we're willing to buy is affected by the price and the price of that product alone. On the other hand, a change in how much we're willing to buy, and it's affected by any other variable, even stuff that we haven't even included on our list. Yeah, happen to be a rainy day. If that affects whether you go to the supermarket or not, yeah, the fact that whether or not you had a fight with your spouse, that's going to affect you whether your child is sick or not. Any other variable that may affect your demand for this product or service, we see that as what we call a change in demand. And if we were to graph that, we see that as a change in the entire demand curve. Okay, any questions? All right, so.
Are you gonna, with these various diagrams, Mr. Demerit, is there like a standard? Are we using these as templates, as for an example, on any exams? Is there a plot
Yes,
system?
it's not going to be in this this homework, but in your next homework, you will get a series of scenarios, and you will have, I think it's 8 or maybe 10 of these diagrams, and you will have to pick the appropriate diagram that reflects what you see happening in the scenario. Say, for example, I give you the word problem, the scenario that says, the Minister of Health launched a massive advertising campaign to get Bahamians to smoke less. Right. Now, does that say anything about the price of cigarettes?
No.
Right. You can't infer anything because the question didn't say anything about the price of cigarettes. All right. All it says is that the Minister of Health started a massive advertising campaign. Doesn't that sound like taste and preferences?
Yeah.
Driven by advertising. So you're trying to stop people from smoking. Are you trying to stop people from smoking cheap cigarettes? Yes. Are you trying to stop people from smoking medium price cigarettes? You know, your Blackwoods or your Backwoods or whatever it is. Yes. Are you trying to stop people from smoking the most expensive brands? Yes. You're trying to stop people from smoking altogether. So that what we're saying is that we're hoping to affect the demand for cigarettes of all prices. So if we're looking at the market for cigarettes, we should see an inward shift in the demand curve for cigarettes. So you would be looking for a diagram that shows only an inward shift in the demand for cigarettes. What we'll do on, it's not going to be Monday, God. But sick of honey. Okay, so no class on Monday. Wednesday. All right. We will work our way through a number of examples and scenarios so that you can get a feel for what you're looking for when you approach your this would be homework number 3. All right. So I won't stress too much about it right now because we will get a chance to work our way through a number of examples come next week.
Very good.
Okay, so we said that this is 3 ways of looking at the same information: a demand schedule, a demand curve, and a demand function. Our task now is to say, okay, how can we take this demand function and put it to use? Because I am asserting to you that the reason why we want to make use of demand function as opposed to demand schedule or the demand curve is that it allows us greater flexibility to do a lot more things. For example, if you look at the demand schedule and you look at the demand curve, the information is in discrete values. It's $1, $1, $0, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. There is no in between. And you know, you very rarely, if ever, see a price that's in a whole number, in a discrete number. You see it as $2.99, $3.75, $4.25, $2.19. And if you look at our demand schedule, then it makes it very difficult, and even from our demand curve, very difficult to make that assessment. Now, if you have your graph paper and you're very, very careful in your plotting, maybe you could come close. Right? What we're asserting here is that the demand function allows us greater flexibility to charge whatever price we want, and then see how much our sales will be at these various intermediate prices. Right? You don't just have to go in whole numbers and whole dollar values. You can charge, any price you want. And in fact, you can see what your sales will be before you actually put the price on the product. Once you have the function, your demand function. All right, so let's see how that works. We're going to work our way through all the kinds of questions that you'll be faced both in your homework and going forward when it comes to working with the demand function. Okay. So this is the demand function that we derived from our previous information from our demand schedule. All right, it's the same demand function. Let's go back so you can see 20 minus 4p. Same demand function. And we saw our last class how we derived this demand function. We say our quantity demanded is the dependent variable. So that's on the right-hand side. Our P is an independent variable. Sorry, let me start again. Quantity demanded is the dependent variable. So it's on the left-hand side of our equal sign. The price is the independent variable. So it's on the right-hand side of the equal sign. Our 20 is our autonomous consumption, and that goes right next to the equal sign on the right-hand side. The minus sign tells us that the quantity demand and price, the two variables, go in opposite direction, what we call negatively related or inversely related, same thing. And the 4 is the slope. The 4 tells us when the price changed by $1, how much quantity demand is going to change. So that's how we got this function. QD equals 20 minus 4P. So let's keep that same function. QD equals 20 minus 4P. I said, okay, how can we put this function to use? So given the demand function above, we can ask and answer a number of questions as it relates to the relationship between the price and quantity demanded or sales of this product or service. So kinds of questions that you'll be faced both in your homework and your exam when you see a function like this would be, okay, if price was not an issue, how many units of this product would consumers demand? If price was not an issue, what would you pay? If demand tells you, pay me whatever you want, how much would you pay him? Any guesses?
Nothing.
Okay, explain.
Well,
Tell me your thinking. I'm not saying you're wrong, I just want to know what you're thinking.
well, if you was, well, I'm just responding to the question you asked. Under normal circumstances, if somebody was to ask, how much would you want to pay for a particular item? If somebody could get it for free and they need an item, somebody would want to pay nothing for it. Or I'm thinking of it wrong.
You're absolutely right. Why would you pay anything? If price was not an issue. Because see, too often people say things like this, and they're looking for you to tell them what your wallet, what's in your wallet. You quite often you see this with taxi drivers. Yeah, they want you to pay them whatever you think it's worth. Yeah, then you turn on their meter, but you tell them what you think you're willing to pay. Because they're banking on the fact that your conscience, whatever that is going to make you pay more for the ride than what the ride is actually worth. Either because you think, you don't want to be shame yourself, you're trying to play use a big shot, or whatever it is, he doesn't care as long as you give him more money than what he would have charged you. All right. And they're banking on the fact that you're not going to say, well, if you tell me pay whatever I will pay, well, I don't want to pay nothing. But when we see this in economics, all right, in this class or any other economics class, if price was not an issue, they are telling you, assume P is equal to $0. Right. Keep that in the back of your mind. If you see a question that says the price is not an issue, it means P is, you assume that P is equal to 0. So then, one question you would certainly be asked, if price was not an issue, how many units of this product would consumers demand? And we can answer each one of these in turn. So let's go through all the questions first. What else you may be asked? You can certainly be asked, at what price would consumers suck their teeth and walk back out the door? At what price would consumers choose not to purchase any units of this product? Clearly, this is very important to a merchant. You want to know when you've crossed that line from your product is pricey, but people still gonna buy it, to your product is so pricey that your sales fall to zero. Right? At what price would consumers choose not to purchase any units of this product? What else might you be asked? Right? If you're given a specific price, all right, so you decide this is the price that I am going to put on my product, how many units would be demanded? Right? You may also see this expressed, how many units would be sold? Well, you can't sell what people are not demanding. So it's the exact same way, it's just two different ways of expressing the same question. So if you're given a specific price, so you decided this is what you're going to price your product at, how many units can you expect to be sold? How many units do you expect customers are going to demand at that price that you are intent on charging? You can also be asked the question, if you have in your mind a certain amount that you want to sell. All right, so given a specific quantity demanded, you have in your mind, I want to sell 40 units of this item. Assuming that my goal is to sell 40 units, what price should I charge to make sure that 40 units are sold? Right? So given a specific quantity demanded, what price should you charge? And finally, you could be asked, assuming that you can only price your product in specific monetary units. So you said, okay, let's say we're talking 25-cent increments. So you can price your product at $1, because $1 is 4 quarters, $1.25, $1.50, $1.75, $2. Right? Is that not 25-cent increments? Right. So if we're saying you can only price your product in 25-cent increments, all right? So whatever price you're charging, it has to be in 25-cent increments. Now, this could also be in 10-cent increments. This could be in 1-cent increments. That's entirely up to me as the one, posing the question to you. Right? How do you work out how much is going to be sold at those intermediate prices? All right, so let's walk our way through and solve each of these type of questions given this specific function. You would have noted from your homework that you have a different demand function than this one. All else is the same. Your QD's on the left, P's on the right, you have an autonomous consumption, you have a slope, and you have a negative sign. So your demand function and my demand function is functionally exactly the same. Okay, so let's work our way through this one step at a time. First question was, if price was not an issue, see, here's the question in red. A, if price was not an issue, how many units of the product would consumer demand? So how do you go about solving this? First things first, you construct a box as you see on the upper right-hand side. And you put P and QD. Then you go back to the question that you're being asked and you ask yourself, okay, what am I being asked for and what am I being given? Because if you look at your function has two unknowns. Your function has a QD, quantity demanded, which you don't know, and it has a P, which you don't know. So those two variables represent two unknowns. You cannot solve a problem with two unknowns, which means if you're being asked a question, it must be that they must have been giving you one of those unknowns and asking you to find the other one. So the first thing you do, you construct a box. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where the box is not going to become necessary. But as we're starting out, you construct a box. So your P equals and QD equals, and then you said, okay, what am I being asked for, or what am I being given based on the question? So let's go to the question. Step one says you construct a box to identify your two unknowns. right? So we plug into our demand equation what we know and solve for what we don't know. So based on the question, what do we know? The question says, if price was not an issue, how many units of this product will be demanded? All right. Question for you, what are we being asked for, a price or a quantity?
Price?
If you look at the question
No
says,
quantity,
if price was not an issue, how many units?
units, yes, quantity.
So we're being asked for a quantity. So in our box, we have QD equals question mark. That's what we're trying to find. If that's the case, then somewhere in that question, they must tell us a price, because they can't leave us with two unknowns. So based on the question, what would be the price? The question says, if price was not an issue.
So 0.
So we say P is equals 0.
Yeah.
So in our box, we put P equals 0, and we know QD is what we're looking for. That's why we have the question mark. All right. So now that we've done that, then our next step is we put down the equation QD equals 20 minus 4P. That's the equation we're working with. And we plug into that equation what we know, and we solve for what we don't know. What we know based on our box is that P equals 0. Ladies and gentlemen, a word of advice. 0 is a number. Treat it like any ordinary number. Too often, students see 0 and they consider it a blank. They dismiss it. And they find themselves running into problems where their math doesn't work out. If you treat 0 as a number, it will work fine. All right. We know P is equals 0, so we said we take our equation, our function is QD equals 20 minus 4P. We now, based on our box, we know P is equals 0. So wherever we see P, we stick 0 there. And we end up with QD, I'm looking at the piece in blue now, QD equals 20 minus 4 times P. We said P is 0, it'll QD minus 4 times 0. Another bit of advice. Use your calculator. Even when something seems clear and obvious, use your calculator. Right? Because it's very easy to think 4 times 0 is 4, and it is not. 4 times 0 is 0. So we end up with QD equals 20 minus 0, and 20 minus 0 is 0. Our answer then is that at a price of 0, we will demand 20 units. For your homework, as you see, I've put down all the workings, and I expect you for your homework to show me all the workings.
Algebra all over again. Or shall I say simultaneous equation?
No, oh, God. This is not simultaneous. We can do simultaneous equation, and you realize, oh, this is not simultaneous. No, this is simple algebra. All right, okay. Let's try it. So, shall we try the next one? At what price, I'm reading in red, B, at what price would consumers choose not to purchase any units of this product? What are being asked for? What are they asking us for?
Price. Let's see, at what price?
At what price? What, where, who, when, and why? What price? So we put a question mark next to P. So if that's the case, then somewhere in the question, they must tell us what quantity demanded is. So what's quantity demanded? What are we being asked for and what are we being given? We just
Well,
said that we're being asked for P, so they must have given us Q. So what's Q?
Q is QD 0.
Yeah, 0.
Because
They
It's
choose
choose
not
it.
to purchase
Yeah.
any units, and any is equal to 0 units.
so if you're not
Just to
buying
be
any, that
got it, just to
means
be
you're not
got it.
buying, you're buying none, which
None.
means 0. Okay, so now we know QD is 0. So first thing we do, we put on our equation. We always put on our equation first because it grounds us. It centers us. Even when we don't know how to, the first step in solving the problem, we completely lost. We know we put down the equation first. And maybe that will trigger something. So we put down the equation first, we put down the function first, and then we plug in what we know, and then we solve for what we don't know. We know based on the box, and you just told me demand is equal to 0. Isn't that what you guys told me?
Mhm.
All right, and I said 0 is a number, it's not a blank space. So we plug in 0. And if we end up with 0 equals 20 minus 4p. Follow me? Where I had QD, I put 0.
Mhm.
Because that's what we decided. Now, do you recall, I know for some people it may be a little bit longer than others, but when we're trying to find P by itself. We're trying to find price. But we have 20 minus 4p. If we take this minus 4p and we put it on the other side of that equal sign, when we move a variable from one side of the equal sign to the other side of the equal sign, you may recall from your high school days, the sign changes. So that minus 4p, if we move it over, it becomes positive 4p. Right. So we end up with a positive 4p equals 20. So far, so good? Follow me? We need a few more examples to work our way through. Okay, fine. We know that 4p is equal to 20. But we don't want 4p. All right, we don't want 4 times the price. We want to know what the price is all by itself. We want
Individually per unit.
right. So to do that, then, we want to get rid of that 4. So if we divide 4p by 4, we end up with, all right, let's just, let me add a little thing here. Oops. Oops, where'd I go? Oh, here you go. Okay. Oops. What did I do wrong? Okay, let's go tab. And copy. Paste. Okay. So if we have 4p equals 24.
20 divided by, all
right.
Okay.
All right, this is the top piece here. All right, let me do this tab. All right. If we do 4p divided by 4, all right, so we divide the 4p by 4. According to the law of algebra, whatever we do on one side of the equal sign, we have to do the exact same thing on the other side of the equal sign. Because remember now, the equal sign is saying these two sides are equal. That's what it means. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. Right? I know on the left-hand side, I want to divide by 4, because if I divide by 4, the 4's cancel out, and I leave with p by itself. But if I do that, then I also divide the other side by 4. All right, and that will leave me with tab p What am I doing? Oops. P equals, what's 20 divided by 4?
5.
Because the 4's cancel out, leaves the P by itself, 20 divided by 4, and that gives me my answer of $5. We will get a chance to practice a little bit more. All right. So all we're doing is saying, okay, step 1, we construct our box. And in our box, we know there's only 2 variables, there's a P and a Q. And we're saying, what are we being asked for? And that's usually the easier question to answer. And what are we being given? Right. We plug those into our box. Then we put down our function, plugging what we know into our function and solving what we don't know. Right. Let's look at the third one. This is C. C says, given a specific price. In this case, let's say that price is $2.25. How many units will be demanded? What are we being asked for? A price or a quantity?
Quantity.
We're being asked for quantity because they asked how many units will be demanded. That sounds like quantity. Then somewhere in there, they must have given us a price.
25.
$2.25. Right. So we start off with our function, QD equals 20 minus 4P. We plug in what we know. We know the price is $2.25. Right? So let's plug 225 in and let's solve for what we don't know. We don't know what quantity is. So we end up with QD equals 20 minus 4 times P. We now know P is $2.25. We have 20 minus 4 times $2.25. What's 4 times 2.25?
9.
You see that, or you got up on your push button thing?
You said use the calculator.
Yeah, you use your calculator. No, I want you to use your calculator.
Right. But
So you
yeah.
got 9. So you end up with QD equals 20 minus 9, and the answer turns out to be 11. So at a price of $2.25, we know that we'll be able to sell 11 units, or 11 cases, or 11 pallets. All we know is 11. All right. If we were to charge $2.25, we would sell 11. All right. Let's see. What else could you be asked here? Given a specific quantity demanded, what price should be charged? Question is, we construct our box. What are we being asked for?
Right.
A price or a quantity?
Price.
We're being asked for a price. What price should we charge? Yes. So the way we know, because it's always what, when, who, where, or why. And they're asking us what price should we charge, so we know they're asking for a price. So somewhere in there, they must have given us a quantity.
So where is the quantity?
You
Is
tell
this-
me.
This the example here in the QD
D.
equals.
See D in red?
QD equals 3. Okay.
All right, so now your quantity is 3.
Yeah. Well,
You
what if
sure? Because you don't sound sure.
well, I would say an example I can only use what they give me, right? 'Cause, I mean, that's a tricky question because if you're giving me the example,
No.
but then you're still telling me QD is 20 equal 20.
Did I tell you QD is 20?
No, I'm confused because I guess what I'm saying is my formula is
No. I asked you a question. You gave me an answer, then you went about doubting yourself.
no. I was confused because when I looked at it, I see the table that says QD equals 3. I'm trying to figure where the 3 comes from.
No, that box only shows up after you figured out what QD is. Just remember that you start with the box, your box is normally blank.
Right.
Your box would be, oh, for heaven's sake, what's it here? Okay, I can't type in it. A box will be P is equal to blank, QD is equal to
Yes,
blank.
so blank. Mhm.
And then you fill in based on what you see in the question.
Okay, okay, yeah, now I see the QD. Okay,
But you see the 3 in the question.
yeah, so QD equal to 3.
Right?
Okay,
So
Mm.
now, to solve this, the first thing you do, you put down your function. QD equals 20 minus 4P. Then you plug in what you know and solve for what you don't know. All right, what do you know?
we know the quantity demand is equal to 3.
All right, so we plug the 3 into our equation and we end up with 3 equals 20 minus 4P.
4P.
Yes?
Yeah,
So now we know we want P by itself. So we take that 4P, move it to the left-hand side of the equal sign,
the equal
and
4P.
it becomes positive because we're moving it across. And we take the positive 3 and move it to the right-hand side of the equal sign so that we have all the quantities together, all the numbers together, and all the letters together. So we end up at that positive 3. You do know that when there's not a sign, a letter,
Mhm.
we assume a sign in front of a number, we assume that number is positive.
Like terms 2.
So we take that 3, we move it over, and it becomes minus 3. So we collect like terms,
Mhm.
right? Numbers on the right-hand side, letters on the left-hand side, and we end up with 4P equals 20 minus 3.
Which
Now,
is 17.
yes, you want to use your calculator. 20 minus 3 is 17. So we end up with 4P equals 17. I skipped a step somewhere along the way. You
Because I
divide
need
both
to-
sides by 4. 4P divided by 4 gives you the P by itself. And whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you have to do on the other side of the equal sign. So when we divide it by 4 to get the P by itself, we also have to divide the 17 by 4. And what's 17 by 4?
4.25.
So now we know at a price of $4.25. No, if we wanted to sell 3 units, 3 boxes or 3 cases or 3 pallets of this item, whatever it is, right, we have to charge $4.25. That will allow us to sell the 3 units that we want to sell. All right, last type of question. I think it's the last time. Hang on, let's open this all the way. Yes. All right. Assuming that we can only price the product in specific monetary increments. For example, we only can price this product in 25-cent increments. So the price can only be in $1, 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents. How do we determine price if given a specific quantity demanded? Right. So the question you will be asked would be something along the line, what is the maximum price that we can charge to the nearest 25 cents and still sell at least 11.5 units? Before you get all confused, I don't understand, Mr. Merritt, lost.
Mr. Demerit, let's start that one over.
I just gonna say, please start that over.
Please, yeah, let's try that again, please. So,
We're saying we can only price our product in 25-cent increments. You follow me? So we can charge when we price our product. All right. You know how right now we don't use pennies anymore. So your product should be priced in 5-cent increments. 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 25 cents, 25, etc. Right? We're saying in this case, we have decided that we're not going to price our product in anything other than 25-cent increments. So an item could cost $1, or it could cost a price that's ending in 25, like $1.25. It also can be priced in something that ends in 50 cents. Because 50 is an increment of 25, that's 2 25s. Right? 3 25s is 75 cents. So certainly we can price it in 75-cent increments. So we can price our product into, let's say, $1, or $1.25, or $1.50, or $1.75. So 25-cent increments. That's all this first part is saying. Right? So the question now is, what's the most you can charge for this item and still sell at least 11.5 units, bearing in mind that you can only price your product in 25-cent increments? What did we say is the first step? All right.
The
You're
first
completely
step-
lost in this question, and that doesn't matter because you know what your procedures is.
Draw
In
the
your
box.
procedures, you draw your box.
Right.
You don't figure out what the question's saying yet, but you know the first step is you draw your box. What's the next step?
Plug in what you know.
What are you being asked for, and what are you being given? All right. What are you being asked for? Are you being asked for a price, or are you being asked for a quantity?
Ask for price.
What is the maximum price? So you're being asked for price. You don't figure what that maximum word in there is going to mess with your thinking, but you know it's saying, what is the price? So you know you put a question mark next to the P, which means somewhere in the question, they must have given you a quantity. What's your quantity?
11.5.
11.5 units.
All right, so you still ain't figuring anything out, but you know some things that you know what you do know. All right, you know the question's asking you for a price, and now you know because you're taking a moment to take a deep breath and not panic. You say, okay, I know the price. I know they asked me for a price, and I know a quantity that they're giving me is 11.5 units. All right. So why don't I start working with that and see what happens? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right, so let's start working with that information and see what happens. So what's the next thing we would normally do?
Start your formula.
You put down the equation, the function,
Mhm.
all right, which is QD equals 20 minus 4P.
Mhm.
All right, and we plug in what we know and
Right.
solve for what we don't know.
Right.
So we plug in the 11.5 because that's what we know in terms of the quantity.
QD. Uh-huh.
So we have 11.5 equals 20 minus 4P.
Right. Now we collect like terms.
We collect like terms. So you move the 4P to the left, so it becomes positive 4P. We move the 11.5 to the right, and it becomes minus 11.5. So now we end up with 4P equals 20 minus 11.5. Use your calculator to make sure, and that turns out to be
8.5.
8.5. So now you have 4P equals 8.5. But we want P by itself. So we divide P by 4. And whatever we do on one side of the equal sign, we have to do on the other side of the equal sign as well. So you divide the 8.5 by 4.
Now, Mr. Demary, we're not rounding
No,
off anything, right?
No.
Just
What you running?
no, I'm just asking a
Anybody said
question.
anything we rounded off?
I only asking for a friend. Suppose you have one of those answers that have 2.33333.
Then you do 2.33333.
But that's an infinity. I could be till thy kingdom come.
First things first. What answer did you get?
0.125 exact.
2.125. All right. Generally speaking, you are not required to go beyond 4 decimal places.
Thank you.
Right. All right. So now you have a price of, what is 2.125? That's $2.12.5. Yes?
If there is such, yeah, paying $12.12.5.
Yes. But what does our question say in terms of how we price our product?
Increment of 25 cents each.
And 12.5 cents is not 25 cents. We say it could be 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, or a whole dollar.
So
It
that
can't be
means-
12.5 cents.
No.
All right, so let's go back to what our question is saying.
Mhm.
Question is saying, what is the maximum price we can charge to the nearest 25 cents and still sell 11.5 units? So now we have a price, but now we need to figure out what is the maximum price to the nearest 25 cents.
So it'll be a flat $2.
All right, so what are the possibilities?
I'll say a flat $2 because if you go up on the price, the law means the demand goes down. But I want to sell 11.5, so I gotta stay the same. So I gotta bring my price down to at least meet the minimum requirement, like what the question say.
So now he's thinking, now, okay, let's see. So there's two possibilities. You can either go down to $2 or up to $2.25. Those are the nearest 25 cents, right? Our answer comes out to, I'm reading in blue, our answer comes out to $2.12.5. However, because we price our products in 25-cent increments, we have to adjust our price either up to $2.25 or down to $2.
Mhm.
Because these are the two closest 25-cent increments. But which is the correct price? Now, ideally, you should test both. Oh, that would be the safest course of action. Right? So to test both, all right, remember now, the two options we have is $2.25 or $2. So we want to test both of those prices. So what we do, we take our, always go back to our initial function, Q equals 20 minus 4P. All right. And let's plug in two different prices into that equation. So that's since we have two equations. We have Q equals 20 minus 4P, and we're using the 25 cent, $2.25. That's the first column. And the second column, we see we have P equals $2. So the first column, we have Q equals 20 minus 4P, and instead of P, we use 225. 24 times 225, you can use your calculator, it comes out to about 9. And when we work that out, we end up with Q equals 11 units. So when we charge $2.25, we sell 11 units. What if we were charging $2? Let's go to the next column over. When the price is $2, we plug in $2 in our equation. 20 minus 4 times $2. 4 times 2 is 8. 20 minus 8 is 12. So when we charge $2, we sell 12 units. When we charge $2.25, we sell 11 units. Go back to our question and read to the top. How much do we need to sell?
Okay. Boy, that one get me just, I had to look twice, okay.
We
At
need to
least
sell
11
11.5 units.
11.5. So
Okay.
we gotta go with the
So we have to
225.
go with the.
No, if you go to
No,
225, we only sell 11 units.
never, we have to go with that 12, QD equals 12.
We need, she said, we need to sell at least
At
Oh, yeah,
least
yeah,
that.
yeah,
11.5
yeah,
units.
yeah.
Anything
I
less
sold
than
the
that.
least.
That's it,
Okay,
you can't sell that.
okay.
So
Gotta
we
go
have to go down to $2. The correct answer would be P is $2 because the question says we must sell at least 11.5 units.
Okay.
And so
All right.
shortcut, the one and only shortcut I will ever tell you in this class.
Minus the thingy.
And it's already been previewed. All right. Oops, I lost my way.
You have all this in our presentation in our book.
Yes. All right. The law of demand says, as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. And as price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Remember now, when we worked out the initial answer to our question, we got $2.12.5, right? And at that price, we sold exactly 11.5 units. What if we raise the price? What happens to the amount of units that we're going to sell? Law of demand says if we raise our price, we're going to sell less. Right? So even if we raise our price to $2.13, we're going to sell less than 11.5 units. Any increase in price above $2.12.5 can mean that we sell less than 11.5. And we can't sell less than 11.5. We have to sell, we can sell more than 11.5, but we can't sell less than 11.5. Because the question says we have to sell at least 11.5. So whatever our answer, our price turned out to be, we know we can't go up. We can only go down.
Mhm.
All right.
You still have to
Yes,
show your workings though, because I mean, you really,
For homework, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
you do not necessarily, if you are absolutely sure and you're comfortable, you know, and you don't want to show your test for both answers, yeah, you can look at it and say $2.12. Well, I know I can't go up, and the only way I can go down is $2. That's fine.
I like to show my work. And would workings give you extra points?
Workings make you feel confident in your answer. And
So no.
you have something that you can argue and defend if your homework comes back and you see it marked wrong. Because you said, wait, show me why I went wrong. But if you only give me an answer and nothing to work with, you know. Okay, here's the problem. All right. There may come a time in your homework and an exam where you work with your answer like this, and it comes out to $2.99. And the question says, what is the maximum price to the nearest dollar?
$3.
Why?
So it ain't gonna be 99. You get 1 cent. The nearest dollar is 3.99. Round up would be 3, not round down.
What does the question say?
The nearest
What is
dollar.
the maximum price that we can charge to the nearest dollar and still sell at least? What happens if you round up to $3? Does the amount you sell go up or go down?
If I round it up to 3, then I know for a fact my demand will be less.
Exactly.
But in this case, we're not. We're leaving it at the $2 so that my
No. What I'm saying is,
Uh-huh.
even if your answer turned out to be $2.99,
right
you cannot go up.
up. Yeah,
To go up is to be wrong,
exactly.
because to increase the price means that demand is going to fall. And
True.
you can't have your demand falling by less than 11.5 units. Okay. In real life, the way this works is that you're running a store, all right? And you know you have to make payroll every week. And you know exactly what you need your sales to be to make sure you make payroll every week. That means you need to sell at least, in this case, 11.5 units to make payroll. Okay. You can sell more than 11.5, so you make payroll and you have some left over, but you know you can't sell not even 1 unit less. Because then what are you going to tell your staff? Well, listen, we ain't making enough money this week. No. So that's what we're saying. When you have a situation like this, even if when you work out your answer, it came into $2.99, you cannot, under any circumstance, go up, because if you go up, demand is going to go down. That's what we're talking about, and you cannot do that. Okay, let's see. Any questions before we move on?
I had a question on just that table at the beginning. I was just curious as to
Which
the
table?
plot, the very first one that displayed in a table.
one?
Yeah. When I looked at it, I don't know if I was doing it right in that this was my understanding when I read it. I don't know, I was just thinking that I would -4 every time in the QD section, like how you have 20, -4, I am doing just that. 20 from 4 to 16, from 4 to 12, from 4 to 8, from 4, leaving you at 0.
What if you're going in the opposite direction?
Exactly.
See, all this is saying, when you see that this -4, this is saying the P and the Q go in opposite directions by 4 units. So if it's going from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, the price, the quantity goes down by 4 units. But if you're going from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2.1, the quantity is going up by
Up.
4 units.
Right, right.
So the negative sign is just saying that the P and the Q go in opposite directions. The
Okay.
4 is telling you how much in the opposite direction they're going.
Right.
All right.
And this graph here, you said you show us examples of how to do that. I mean, this one is easy. I see how we got
Yes.
slope.
It will never get more complicated than this, and I would never ask you to,
Yeah.
produce a graph, because that's,
Yeah.
9th,
Okay.
10th grade stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? At least this should give you, you can use what we have here as a template to take a stab at your homework questions. Your homework questions are almost identical to these, except the function is different. Yeah, but the style of the questions are all the same. All right. Okay. The other part of your homework is going to be identifying public versus private goods. So I am very interested. All you need to do is you put an X. All right. Your driver's license, is it a private or public good?
Public.
Explain. I remember now, shall we go back to our definition of public and private? Okay, where are we? Okay, so let me copy this. Copy this. Yes. All right, so here is what we're talking about. So a public good must be non-excludable and non-rivalrous for public good. Non-excludable means that you cannot exclude that non-payers cannot be excluded from the benefit of the good or service. And non-rivalrous means that one individual doesn't preclude consumption by one individual doesn't preclude the consumption of the same good by another. All right, bearing that in mind, let's see.
Never mind, I changed it, it's private.
Can somebody who didn't pay for your driver's license use your driver's license?
No,
All right. If you're using your driver's license, can somebody else use your driver's license?
no,
So therefore, your driver's license
it's
is a private
private.
good. Okay, Robinson Road. Can you use your Robinson Road even if you didn't pay for it to be constructed?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Does you using Robinson Road stops me from using Robinson Road?
No,
No,
It is both non-excludable on non-rivalrous, makes it a public good. All right, this econ class, public or private?
private.
Okay. You sitting in class, does that stop somebody else from sitting in the same class?
No.
All right, so it's
And they gotta
It's-
pay? Or they
it's
can come for
non-right,
free?
okay. You tell me, here's the question. All right, let's go back to our conversation here. All right. If people who do not pay for the class, can they be excluded from the class?
yes,
So it is excludable. We can exclude people from the class who didn't pay for the class. Right. If one person is sitting in the class, can another person sit in the same class and be taught the same lessons?
yes,
Yes.
So here you have an issue where it's excludable, but it's non-rivalrous. We said to be a public good, it must be both non-excludable. You can't stop people from sitting in the class even if they didn't pay, and it must be non-rivalrous.
Okay, so it's only one. So it,
That makes it a private good. It has to be both. It has to satisfy both in order to be a public good. All right. What about when you walk in the door, these door sanitizers? Public good or private good?
public,
Explain. Can you use it even if you didn't pay?
yes.
Okay. Can you stop somebody else from using it?
No,
So it is both non-excludable and non-rivalrous. All right. You order a pizza pie. Public or private?
private. You say I order pizza?
Yeah, you
They
order a
order
pizza.
or just pizza?
Yeah, that's private, because I
You
have to
ordered a
pay.
pizza, it came to you, you know, you whipped out your credit card. All right, they dropped it off, you took it inside and put it on your counter.
What if it's the flip side? What if you there to just pick up a pizza?
Meaning what? Like you're a delivery person?
No, meaning I
you
go
get
to
it
the
for
store, the pizza is available and I pick it up. Is that private or public?
Public.
Okay, you
Yeah,
walk
I
into
walk
Pizza
into
Hut.
a Pizza Hut, like how you go into Little Caesars, the pizza's available. I didn't order it.
Okay, all right, so you're going into Little Pizza, Little, whatever that place name, we know, Little Caesar. All right. Walk in, pick up a pizza. Can you leave without paying?
No,
That's not.
All right, so if you were to eat that pizza, can someone else come along and eat the same pizza?
Now what can be? No,
So it is both excludable and rivalrous. It's a private good. All right. Fine. What about pizza with your friends? You have a pizza party.
at public. Yeah,
Can you tell your people, listen, y'all ain't paid, so y'all don't eat?
I eating that.
no,
All right. So it is both non-excludable. You can, in all good conscience, stop somebody from picking up a slice just because they didn't throw in their $2. All right. And just because you get a slice doesn't mean somebody else can't pick up a slice as well. Public good. All right, fine. Dune Restaurant, that is the fancy restaurant at one and only Ocean Club. Yeah, if you got $300, $400, $500 and you want to do nothing with, go have dinner.
Private.
Or if you really want to impress some, your future wife. See, you don't see me raising my hand? Okay. Is it public or private?
Private.
Can you eat without paying?
No.
No.
I can't even set it. I can't even make reservations.
All right, so it is not, it is excludable, certainly, and it is also rivalrous, so that makes it a private good. Bahamas Air, public or private?
One and only.
Okay, but does that answer the question?
Private.
No,
Private.
private.
eh?
I pay for my ticket. I want my seat. No one else could go
Okay.
in my seat. I not
Right.
pay.
So it's both excludable and rivalrous.
Private.
All right, it's, all right, cocoa plum trees.
Public.
Public, 'cause anybody can pick up that one tree.
And just because you
means
pick
I had
off the tree, don't mean somebody else can't pick up. that
Someone
tree.
else can't pick up the tree, right?
All that don't means I plant the tree and somebody else can pick up the tree.
All right. Huh. And that makes it public.
Public.
All right. What about this one? Let me see. Can have tree in your neighbor yard?
Depends on how it fall. If it fall by yard,
Public or private?
that's public.
I'd say private.
It's private,
It's private though.
but it's not, it's non, what you call it, non-rivalrous.
It's the problem. Is it excludable? Can you stop
Yeah.
people from picking off that tree, even though they didn't plant the tree or
No,
put manure around it or water that tree?
Yeah, the name of it.
I
Yeah, the name
need
of
to,
it, no?
I
No.
need to introduce you to some rascals.
I see.
So, yes, technically that will count as a private good, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And you do want to be careful when you're doing these, in that you don't just follow your mind, but you go and say, okay, is it actually non-excludable or is it actually non-rivalrous under our definition? Because too often we may think in our head, that's public, or that's private, when it has to actually meet the criterion for public good and or private good. All right. But that should give you enough information to be able to take a good stab at your homework. All right. And remember that your homework is due before 6 p.m. on Monday, although there's no class on Monday. Okay, so that's all about demand. So now we want to shift our focus to supply. And we're going to do exactly the same thing we did for all our discussion about. Did my thing flicker just now?
No, we
Okay.
can see the screen.
Okay. Everything we did with the demand, we're going to do the same for supply. We started off with our definition. Right? When we had our definition of demand, now our definition for supply. In order for there to be supply of a good or service, the following three conditions must be satisfied simultaneously. Firstly, a firm must be prepared to supply that good or service at that time. If you ain't ready now to supply this product to the market, we cannot say that you are able to supply this product or service. The fact that you're saying, listen, I'm waiting till my shipment can come in, in October. Well, you ain't supplying that product now. You may be supplying that product in October, but now, no. First things first, you must be able, you must be prepared to supply that good or service at that time. Secondly, you must have a desire to supply that good or service. Clearly, you cannot supply a product that you have no interest in stocking. Okay? You have no interest in supplying that, making available to the market, so no. All right. Yeah, if you think about it, let's take, for example, say Kelly's in the mall. I'm absolutely certain that Kelly's in the mall, can supply, say, I don't know, can sell televisions, but they don't want to. They have no desire to sell that particular product. Right? So we can say Kelly's is not in the market to supply televisions. And thirdly, a firm must have the financial or technical capability of providing that product. Kelly certainly have enough money if they wanted to stock televisions and computers and laptops, and they could. They have the ability. Right. So in order for a firm to be able to supply, for there to be supply of a good or service, a firm must be ready, willing, and able to supply that product. All right. You could want to supply stuff, you could even be ready to supply it now. But if you don't have any contacts to be able to bring that stuff in to make it available to the market, then you are not in the business of supplying that product. So we've defined supply as you must be ready, willing, and able to put this particular product to the market in order for that to be considered a supply of that good or service. Right? So that's the first thing we're going to define is what we need when we talk about supply. Secondly, the law of supply. The law of supply, all other things being equal, here's our ceteris paribus assumption again. So we ignore everything else that may influence this whole process. All other things being equal, an increase in the price of a good or service will lead to an increase in the quantity supplied of that good or service. Right. Similarly, a decrease in the price of a good or service will lead to a decrease in the quantity supplied of that good or service. You would note that the law of supply, price and quantity supplied go in the same direction. If you think about this from the perspective of the firm, because they're the ones who supply goods and services to the market, the more they can get for a product or service, the more they're willing to put on the shelf. Because for every additional item they put on the shelf, that's more money they can make. All right. If they can't make no money on that product, they don't want to put it on the shelf. You know that we have price control on a certain basket of goods. All right. Price control item. It's not on everything. A lot of Bahamians think price control applies to all products, and it doesn't. In a very small basket of goods, which is determined that the average Bahamian household consumes, which is anything but true, because things in this basket include like carnation cream. It's actually evaporated milk, but we Bahamians call it cream. It includes whole milk, not the gallon size, the other quart size whole milk. Very few Bahamians nowadays drink whole milk, except for, I guess, with maybe babies. It includes white Wonder bread. Who buys white Wonder bread? Right. And it very clearly specifies white Wonder bread. It includes toilet tissue. No, not the kind with aloe, not the kind with wrinkles and crinkles that make you feel so nice and clean. Not the kind with scents. No. It's a very thin, single ply, no extra nothing. All right. You may remember, some of you probably never experienced it. It's the kind of toilet tissue where you roll and 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 roll to get enough to do the job. That's what we're talking about. All right. And there's a number of other items in there. Corned beef, tuna, if I recall correctly. And peas, right? It was just Sawyer's or somebody, Campbell's. I can't remember whatever the peas is, but for the peas and rice. Weird. Right. The point is, all right, for these price control items, all right, supermarkets cannot make any money of these. All right, because the government controls the price of these items. So as far as the supermarkets are concerned, or any store, they don't want these items on their shelf because ain't no money to be made from these items. Right? We can't price them how we want, and the government sends people to go check up on the price all the time. And in fact, the only way that they keep these things, they provide these things, they supply these things to the market, is because they're mandated by government. Government not only says that this is the price you have to charge, the government says this is how many of these items you have to put on the shelf. Right? So what would happen is, let's say we're talking about the bread, the regular sized loaf of white Wonder bread. And the government saying, you have to put at least this amount of loaves available for sale in any given week. What the supermarkets will do, right? They will, okay, fine, but we put them on at the very bottom of the shelf, on the shelves, or the very top of the shelves, all right? And we start that very early on in the week. Hopefully, we try to get rid of these as soon as possible to make way for our, whole wheat, rye, pumpernickel, sourdough, multigrain, raisin and cinnamon loaves, all the stuff that we could charge $7 and $8 and $9 for, because that's where we make our money. The stuff the government forces us. Otherwise, because if it wasn't for government requiring us to do this and coming in checking up on us, we wouldn't put this thing on our shelf. We wouldn't even have it in our warehouse. We wouldn't even bring it into the country. Ain't no money to be made for it. And that brings us to what we call the supply schedule. Similar to when we're talking about the demand schedule, the supply schedule comes from surveys done by statistical agencies, in our case, Department of Statistics, and they're asking the same question that when they're talking about demand. All right. What was the price of this item, and how much did you stock of this item put out for sale? How much did you supply for this item? Not how much is in the warehouse, because warehouse is not considered supply. It's what you have on the shelf. All right. So this is a list of prices and associated quantities supplied. The supply schedule usually results of surveys conducted by relevant pricing authorities, which are compiled in a tabular form. Right. That's the table on the right. And you would notice as price goes up, the amount firms are willing to supply to the market also goes up. And price goes down, they want to supply less and less to the market. And if the price is zero, that means they can't charge anything for this. If they can't charge for it, they're not going to supply any. Supply is going to fall to zero. So if we were to sort of graph this table, 0, 0 will always be on the graph. So here's the graph here. It starts, in fact, let me make it bigger so you can see. It starts at 0, 0. Right. And it goes up from there. I'll put that back where it's supposed to be. All right. And here's our demand, our supply schedule. And all we do, we've graphed this. So we have 0, 0. We have 1, 4. Okay, it's still kind of small. 1, 4, 2, 8, 3, 12, 4, 16, and at $5, we're willing to sell 20 items. When you connect those dots, see? When you connect those dots, you end up with an upwards sloping curve. So the supply curve is a graphical representation of the supply schedule. We just took the supply schedule and we made a graph out of it. It is accomplished by plotting the points of the supply schedule, P and Q, as indicated in the graph. Oh, this is not right. Thank you. And let's fix that. There we go. Oops, I went too far, didn't I?
I was gonna say, is it look upward?
So here's our supply schedule and our supply curve. So all we do is that we've plotted the supply schedule. All right. Now, Remember when we did the demand function? We do exactly the same to construct the supply function. Yeah. I'm not going to walk it all the way throughout again because that's mathematical theory, and although it's very interesting, what I want you to see, though, is at the very end. So here's our supply schedule. All right. We said that we get to charge whatever we want. So the price is independent. The price is on the right-hand side because it's the independent variable. Point supply is on the left-hand side because it's the dependent variable. Same as the demand curve, right? We get to charge whatever price we want or whatever is prevailing in the marketplace, and how much we're going to be able to supply to the market depend on that price. All right. Remember in our demand schedule where we have a 0, this was 20, what we call our autonomous consumption. Our autonomous consumption, we said, is this is how much people would be willing to demand if the price was 0, if it was free. Same thing here. This is how much firms are willing to supply if the price was 0. And the question is, if you couldn't charge for this item, how much of this item would you be willing to sell? 0. Right. Why should you be giving away stuff for free? If you can't charge for this item, you don't want to sell it. All right. So in this case, the autonomous supply would be 0, which means we can if we can eliminate that from our equation, and we end up with a supply function that just looks like QS equals 4P. Everything else is the same. The quantity is on the left-hand side because it's the dependent variable. The price is on the right-hand side because it's the independent variable. Our autonomous supply is 0. The plus sign, remember our negative sign says that the price and quantity was going in the opposite direction. Now this plus sign is saying the price and quantity are going in the same direction. It says that price and quantity supply either increase together or decline together. Right? When price goes up, quantity supply goes up. When price goes down, quantity supply goes down. They move in the same direction, and that's why we have the plus sign. The 4 says that when the price changes by $1, quantity supply changes by 4 units. Let's look at the schedule and see. Here's our supply schedule on the left. And you can see when the price went from 0 to $1, our willingness to supply went from 0 to 4 units. When price went from $1 to $2, our willingness to supply went from 4 to 8 units. When price went from $2 to $3, our willingness to supply went from 8 to 12 units. When price went from $3 to $4, our willingness to supply went up from 12 to 16 units. And when the price went up from $4 to $5, our willingness to supply went up by 4 units. But the reverse is also true. As the price starts falling from 5 to 4 to 3 to $2, our willingness to supply to the market started declining from 20 units to 16 units to 12 units to 8 units. So I went too far. The plus sign says that the P and the Q go in the same direction. The 4 says that when the P changes by 1 unit, how much does the Q change? The Q changes by 4 units. Right. So here is our supply function. Okay. So now again, as we did with demand, we have 3 ways of looking at the exact same information. We have a supply schedule. When we graph that, we end up with a supply curve, and we also have a supply function. And same way we use the supply function, demand function, we can use the supply function in the same way. Also, remember now, we talked about the factors that may affect the demand for a good or service. We can also talk about the factors that are going to affect the supply of a good or service. The first of these factors is obviously price. Right? For most firms, the price of a good or service is the primary determinant in that decision to supply a good or service. How much money we can make. For most companies, that's where it starts and ends. But there are other factors that may affect how much of this product is being supplied to the market. The first of these other variables is the number of firms. If the number of firms ready, willing, and able to supply the good or service to the market, then the supply of that good or service also rises. I'll let you in on a secret. If another liquor store opens up in your neighborhood, guess what? More liquor is being supplied in your neighborhood. If another crack house opens next door to yours, not to your crack house, I mean to your house. I don't know if you have another crack house, you know. The amount of drugs being supplied in your neighborhood goes up. If another church opens up down the street, then the supply of church services has gone up. Right? Very simple, nothing deep and complicated. The number of firms ready, willing, and able to supply the good or service rises, then naturally supply of that good or service also rises. All right, then we have subsidies and taxes. All right. A subsidy is a cash benefit given to a firm by the government. Right? If the government gives Bahamas Air more money, Bahamas Air now has more money to provide more airline services. So we would expect an increase in subsidies should lead to an increase in supply. Remember we said ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. So we're ignoring any sort of corruption and criminality and under the table dealings and just straight out teething. All right. We're ignoring we're ceteris paribusing that away. All right. All other things being equal, we expect that an increase in subsidies should lead to an increase in supply of that good or service. The reverse is also true. A tax is a sum of money demanded and taken by the government and used to support its activities. You would expect if government increased the taxes on a business, that business would be able, all other things being equal, that business would be in a position to supply less to the market because the government is taking some of its money. All right. Okay, this is not, let me make one correction here before we do that. I know how this slipped in there. This is when you try and do things at 3 o'clock in the morning. Technology. Any improvement in technology which reduces the cost of production will lead to an increase in supply. Again, all other things being equal. If you are a laptop manufacturer, all right, and there's an improvement in the chip technology so that you can produce the same amount of laptops at a lower production cost, clearly that means you can increase your production in your production of laptops. Any improvement in technology which reduces the cost of production will lead to an increase in supply. This also applies to any other input in the production process. All right. If you can reduce the cost of your inputs, all right, whether that input is capital works, even if that input is labor, if you can reduce the cost of your labor as an input in your production process, then you should be able to increase the amount of that item you can produce to supply to the market. And finally, expectation of future prices. Now, here, we saw this when we're talking about the demand for a good or service. But expectation of future prices also applies to firms. But how is it different? So let's go back to our gas example. Right. We said, oh, that's something loud. Right. We said your tank is on quarter tank now, and you don't like to let it go that low. All right. But if you know price is going to fall tomorrow, you're going to hold out and wait till the price falls. Right? Fine, that makes sense. But let's put yourself in the position of the service station owner, who also knows that gas price is going to fall tomorrow. What does he want to do tonight? Anyone?
Ask the question again, please.
You own a gas station. And you know that your new shipment of gas is coming in tomorrow. And the price of that new shipment is going to be much lower than the price you're selling your gas now. Right? What do you do tonight?
I won't sell all my gas tonight at the higher margin.
Because you don't want to get catch with them lower price tomorrow.
No, because I mean, I can have a loss because I purchased them at a higher price. I need my higher money. Now, come tomorrow, I'll have to reduce the price to accommodate the new price.
Exactly.
And I had a loss.
So here's the issue. You weren't planning on trying to sell more gas tonight. You were planning on closing up at 8 o'clock your normal time. But you decide, you know what? It'd make more sense for me to stay open at midnight tonight to try and sell as much gas tonight at the high price now, because I know come tomorrow when I get a new shipment in, I have to reduce the price of my gas in line with the new shipment. So you are supplying more now, even though the price now hasn't changed, but you expect the price tomorrow to change. So you see, your willingness to supply tonight has changed, even though the price didn't change. All right, let's flip that around. You expect your new shipment tomorrow to be much higher price than your current gas that you're selling tonight. What do you do tonight?
I can close up regular time and see if I can
No. You can close up early.
yeah.
So you may close half day. Because understand, when you get this new shipment in and you pump that into your tank, you're not only selling this new shipment at a higher price, you're selling all the gas, even the set that was still in the tank, you're selling them at a higher price too. You can close up early. In fact, you may not open at all that day.
That's why they say no gas in the day when they say, oh, I changing shifts. Yeah, right. Y'all know exactly what y'all doing.
Well, I ain't gonna be in a position accusing nobody, but I know some stories. But yes, but you get the idea. All right. Even though the price doesn't change today, but if you expect the price to change tomorrow, it affects how much you're willing to supply today. Expectation of future prices. All right, where are we? Okay. Similarly to when we're talking about change in demand versus change in quantity demanded, same thing about change in supply versus change in quantity supply. Here's our definitions. If there's a change in the amount of good or service supplied that is due solely to a change in the price level, this is known as a change in quantity supplied and is seen as a movement along the supply curve. However, if there's a change in the amount of good or service supplied due to any other variable, even if it's not one of the variables that we've talked about, any other variable, we say this is called a change in supply and we see it as a shift in the supply curve. All right. We're going to practice those next class. Also, we're going to practice combining both our demand and supply functions together, because here, okay, let's go back one. Because at the end of the day, we are interested in the entire market. Remember now, we're macroeconomic people, macroeconomists, we're big picture people. All right. So we're interested in market equilibrium, using both the demand and the supply sides to work out what is the equitable or equilibrium space for these activities. Right. And we can use the demand and supply curve, demand and supply curve to determine market equilibrium. Okay. So, I removed the graph paper lines, and we end up with a demand curve that looks like what we see on the left. Right. This is exactly the same as our demand curve, and in fact, the function is the same, Q equals 20 minus 4P. All we did is remove the graph lines. And we did the same for our supply curve. Right. Remember what we said at the beginning. We said 3 different ways of looking at the exact same information. We start off with a demand schedule or a supply schedule, and they came from surveys. And we use that information to construct a demand curve, which is just we plotted all those prices and quantities. And we do the same for supply curve. We plotted the same. Right. We connected the dots, and that's how we got these straight lines. So we ended up with a demand curve and a supply curve. We also said that the functions is a functional descriptive function relationship of that same data that we collected. Right. And we said the function, the demand function, perfectly describes and defines the demand curve. Similarly, the supply function perfectly describes and defines the supply curve. It tells us where the curve touches the lines and tells us the slope of those curves. Right. So we did the exact same step-by-step format to get each one of these curves. We have a demand curve. We said it's always downward sloping. A supply curve is always upward sloping. And the law of demand and the law of supply requires, when we try and graph these things, that they look the way they look. All right. So demand curve is always downward sloping, supply curve is always upward sloping. The demand curve and the demand function says the relationship between the price and quantity demanded. The supply curve shows a relationship between the price and quantity supplied. So P is on one axis, Q is on the next axis for both curves. If that's the case, we should be able to draw both of those curves together in the same box. And that's what we have here. Drawing both those curves in the same box. So now we're saying, okay, here's the demand for goods and services based on this curve, and supply of goods and services based on this curve. Right? Using the demand and supply curve, market equilibrium can be determined as the point at which the 2 curves intersect. Right? So when we look at those 2 curves in the same box, where they cross or intersect is the mathematical term, where they cross is what we're calling market equilibrium. Now, we need to figure out how much that actually is and how we can make sense of what that actually looks like. So let's continue in our notes for a moment. Define market equilibrium. First of all, we drop a vertical line from the intersection of the 2 curves to the horizontal axis. So we see where those 2 curves cross, and we start from where they cross and drop a line straight down. All right, that's called dropping a perpendicular down to, we said, the horizontal axis, straight down. Here it is. All right, we start at point Y and we drop our perpendicular straight down. Let's see what else they tell us. This is the point at which demand is equal to supply. And we call that point Q star. So you see in our diagram, when we drop this straight line or this perpendicular from the intersection of the demand and supply curve, and we bring it straight down to our horizontal line, where it touches the horizontal line, we call that Q star. And we said at this point, quantity demand is exactly equal to quantity supply. We then take a horizontal line, continuing in our notes, a horizontal line from where the two curves touch again. Right, and we go to the left where it touches the vertical line, and that would indicate P star or equilibrium price. Let's go back to our diagram. We said we go back to Y, and instead of going straight down, we go straight to the left and see where it touches the vertical or the P line, the price line. And where it touches the price line is what we call P star or equilibrium price. Right. Now, we're saying that if you have two curves, a demand curve, which tells us about the demand for this product, and you have a supply curve that tells you about the supply of this product, when you graph those two curves and you see where they cross, at that point where they're crossing each other, that is where demand is exactly equal to supply. Right? And once you find the P or the P star, the equilibrium price, now you've made some determination. You're able to say at this price, P star, at price P star, everybody who wants this product, right, can get this product as long as they're willing to pay P star. So everybody who wants this and is willing to pay P star can get it. Also, at the very same time, any firm who wants to supply this product can and is willing to accept P star as a price for this product can sell all that it wants to supply to the market. So people can buy all that they want, firms can sell all that they want to sell, as long as everybody agrees to pay that particular price, P star. P star is the one and only unique price at which demand for this product is exactly equal to the amount that companies are willing to supply this product. P star, we're calling equilibrium price, is also known as the market clearing price. It is the price at which quantity demanded is exactly equal to quantity supply, equilibrium. So because both the demand curve and the supply curve are described and defined by the individual functions, the point at which the curves intersect is equivalent to determining a price and quantity that fits both equations. Remember we were, I remember who it was who talked about simultaneous equation. All right. A simultaneous equation is two equations that can be solved by the same variables in both equations. Or if you take these two equations, our quantity demanded equation and quantity supplied equation, right, we would be looking for one price and one quantity that would solve both of those equations simultaneously. And that will yield one P and one Q that fits both of those equations, a system of simultaneous equations. We'll get to that in a moment. All right. So to find market equilibrium, so we can do it graphically. We can just draw the lines very carefully using a graph paper and ruler and very sharp pencil. All right. And we can see where the lines cross. We can drop our line dot, 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 dot down, then dot, 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 dot across and see what it works out to be. We may or may not be right, depending on how accurately we draw our stuff. All right. But that will allow us to find market equilibrium graphically. the more precise means of doing this is to find market equilibrium mathematically. To find market equilibrium mathematically, which we will be doing for the rest of the semester, we must find both a price and a quantity, or a P and a Q, that will simultaneously solve the demand and the supply functions or equations at the same time. Right? Mathematically, this is called solving a system of simultaneous equations. So if you're going to find market equilibrium, all right, so what we're trying to find, we're trying to find two things. We're trying to find a point where demand is exactly equal to supply, and we were trying to find out how much that is, how much quantity will be demanded and how much quantity will be supplied. And we're trying to find what price that is going to take place. So we're trying to find a price at which quantity demand is exactly equal to quantity supplied, and we're trying to find what those quantity demanded and quantity supply actually will be. All right. So we need to solve the system of simultaneous equations. We will certainly go over this again on Wednesday and probably the following Monday, but I do want to introduce it here, just so you get a feel for what we're looking at. Right. And there's a step-by-step approach, right? And I always strongly urge students, all right, lean not unto your own understanding of whatever the biblical passage is. Follow the procedure. All right. Step by step. Step one. We're going to find market equilibrium. Step one says we set QD equal to QS and solve for P. All right. Step one says set QD equal to QS and solve for P. QD is our demand function. We can look and see our demand function is 20 minus 4P.
You can enlarge that table A. You're right.
Mr.
Yes,
Merritt,
ma'am.
this a lot now. This head swinging.
We just
Yeah.
getting started. You want the graph or
The same
what?
graph, that's a QS minus the 4P, right? Unless you bring the table from the other slide and just put the tables up. The equation for the supply is QS minus 4P, right? If you could bring the little tables, then we could see those better
Let's see.
with the formulas. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Copy and paste those ones. You just pass it in.
No. All right, we can take this one.
Yeah,
Let's copy that.
right.
All the way down, all the way down.
Looks like that was not, I forget.
Okay.
That, you just pass it, I think.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And oops,
So,
paste.
yeah, there you
Just
go.
demand, and let's get the supply.
Mhm, There you
Let's
go.
take that.
mhm.
Copy. And paste.
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
Does that help?
Mhm,
Okay. So let me do that back again.
Right.
So
okay.
we said we're trying to find market equilibrium, right? So we're trying to find, we know when we cross the lines, where the lines cross is where quantity demand is exactly equal to quantity supply. But mathematically, it will give us a more precise answer, all right? And to do that mathematically, we need to solve both the demand equation is Q equal to 20 minus 4P, and this supply equation QS equal 4P, but we're looking for the same P to fit both equations and the same Q to fit both equations. Okay. So to do that is what we call solving a system of simultaneous equation. So we set these two equations equal to each other and then try and solve it. The way we do that says, okay, step one, we set QD equal to QS. These are the QD, that's QS. QD is 20 minus 4P, all right? And we said that's equal to QS QS we see is 4P. So end with 20 minus 4P equals 4P. Then we collect terms. All right. Since I like my prices to be positive, I take this negative 4P and move it over so it becomes positive. So I end up with 8P, because 20 equals 8P. Divide both sides by 8. And what's 20 divided by 8?
Anybody answering?
I'm assuming unless all y'all fall asleep.
2.5. What
All right.
happened, everybody?
So now we know $2.50 at $2.50. Everybody who wants this item can get this item as long as they're willing to pay $2.50 for it. And as long as the company is willing to accept $2.50 for this, they can sell as much as they want. All right. So at $2.50, demand is exactly equal to supply. So $2.50 is the market clearing price. Now, once we know what P is, we now stick that in both of these equations, both the demand and the supply equation, and we solve them. We've done this earlier. Oops, I went too far. Once we've determined P star, we substitute the value into our quantity demand equation to ascertain the value of quantity demanded at this price. So we always start with our equation, remember, QD equals 20 minus 4P. But it's not any P now, it's our P star. And our P star we know is $2.50. We plug that in, 4 times $2.50 is $10. 20 minus 10 gives me 10 units. All right, let's do the last one before we call it a night. Now let's take the same $2.50. Let's plug it into our supply equation. Our supply equation is QS equals 4P. We plug that 250 into our supply equation. 4 times 250 is 10. What we found, oops, at price of 250, we work out a demand is 10 units, and supply is 10 units. Demand is exactly equal to supply at a price of $2.50. So we have now determined market equilibrium. We know the price, and we know the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied at that price. Okay, that's our brief introduction to system of simultaneous equation and market equilibrium. All right. I'm going to stop now before people's head explodes. Besides, it is 8:27. I think that's closely up to 8:30. Any questions?
So we're only doing the mathematically, we're not
Determining
doing-
equilibrium mathematically,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
You're not going to be having to
Put
find
that in the
graph
graph.
paper and no.
Yeah, because then I know.
You can
finding
draw
this-
graphs by freehand, but
Yeah.
we're accepting it. It's not going to be what do you call it? To scale.
Good.
All right. Okay. Fine. Does nobody have any issues?
If we come across a hiccup,
You
Are
have my cell number, so text me.
okay, appreciate
or
that.
Send me an email. I tend to respond quickly to text and emails because I usually have 40 or 50 emails a day.
Okay,
All right.
please.
But like I
Thank
said, we will do this again. We will go over this in more detail on Wednesday. In fact, let's see, if you look in your notes, yes, see, we started from scratch. We said, okay, we picked out a demand and supply function, and we try and walk our way through the whole process from beginning to end. All right. With the San Salvador Yam Growers Cooperative. All right, folks, you have your homework due on Monday. But you'll have a nice long holiday weekend. And so enjoy your holiday weekend. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.
All right, thank you
Alright.
very
Thank
much.
you. Good night.
Good
Thank you.
evening,
Good night.
everybody.
Have a good night.